My name is Lily Thompson, 26, pediatric nurse at Children's Memorial Hospital. The metallic taste of blood filled my mouth as I tried to tell the surgeon that something was wrong, but the words came out as nothing more than a wet gurgle. The operating room lights above me blurred into halos of white fire, and I could hear the steady beep of monitors that seemed to be getting faster, more urgent, like my heart was trying to escape my chest. Blood pressure's dropping. Someone said, their voice muffled and distant like they were speaking underwater. I wanted to grab the surgeon's arm, to make him understand that this wasn't supposed to happen during a routine appendectomy, but my hands felt like they were made of lead. The anesthesia was supposed to keep me unconscious, but instead I was trapped in my own body, aware of every cut, every probe, every moment of panic that was spreading through the surgical team like wildfire. Before I go further, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. And if you're hooked already, a like and subscribe will keep these stories coming. Lily, can you hear me? Dr. Rodriguez's voice cut through the fog, sharp with concern. We're having some complications, but we're going to take care of you. Complications. That was a nice way of saying my appendix had ruptured and I was bleeding internally, that what should have been a simple 30-minute procedure had turned into a fight for my life. I tried to blink, to give some sign that I could hear him, but even my eyelids felt too heavy to move. The last thing I remembered before the emergency surgery was calling my mother from the hospital bed, doubled over in pain, that felt like someone was twisting a knife in my side. "Mom, I'm scared," I'd whispered into the phone. "The doctors say I need surgery right away." "You're overreacting, Lily," she'd said, her voice distracted. "You've always been dramatic about pain. It's probably just gas or something you ate." "Mom, I'm at the hospital. They're taking me into surgery in 20 minutes. "Well, I can't come right now. It's Sophia's engagement party, and we've been planning this for months. You'll be fine. It's just an appendix." Just an appendix. As if the organ currently poisoning my bloodstream with infection was no more serious than a hangnail. "Lily, I need you to stay with us," Dr. Rodriguez said, and I could hear the controlled panic in his voice. "We're going to give you more medication, and when you wake up, this will all be over." But I didn't want more medication. I wanted my mother. I wanted someone who loved me to be in the waiting room, pacing the floors and demanding updates from the nurses. I wanted someone to care, that I might not wake up from this table. Instead, my family was 40 miles away, raising champagne glasses and taking photos while I fought for my life. The darkness pulled me under again, but not before I heard Dr. Rodriguez say something that made my blood run cold, get me 2 units of O-negative stat, and call the family. They need to know this isn't routine anymore. When I finally woke up, the first thing I noticed was the silence. Not the peaceful quiet of recovery, but the hollow emptiness of being completely alone. The ICU was dimly lit, machines humming softly around my bed, and through the window I could see the first hints of dawn creeping across the sky. I'd been unconscious for 18 hours. My throat felt like sandpaper, and when I tried to sit up, pain shot through my abdomen like lightning. There were tubes everywhere, in my nose, my arm, places I didn't want to think about. A nurse appeared beside my bed, almost immediately, her face kind but tired. "Welcome back," she said softly. "I'm Jennifer. How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck." I croaked. "That's about right. You gave us quite a scare." She checked my 4 and made notes on her tablet. "Your appendix had ruptured, and you developed peritonitis. Dr. Rodriguez had to do some extensive cleaning, but you're going to be fine." How long was I in surgery? 4.5 hours. Much longer than anyone expected. 4.5 hours. While my family celebrated my sister's engagement, I'd been on an operating table fighting an infection that could have killed me. "Has anyone called my family?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. Jennifer's expression shifted slightly, becoming more careful. We tried calling the emergency contact number you gave us. Several times. No one answered. Of course, they didn't answer. They were too busy taking pictures and making toasts to be bothered with something as inconvenient as their daughter nearly dying. We left messages. Jennifer continued, explaining the situation and asking them to call back. That was around midnight. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was almost 7 in the morning. 7 hours since the hospital had tried to reach my family, and still no one had come. Lily, is there someone else we can call? A friend, maybe? I thought about my coworkers, my college roommate who lived across the country, the few friends I'd managed to maintain despite working 60-hour weeks at the hospital. But the truth was, I'd always relied on my family to be there for the big moments, good and bad. I'd never needed a backup plan because I'd never imagined they wouldn't show up. No, I said quietly, there's no one else. Jennifer squeezed my hand gently. Well, you're not alone now. We're going to take good care of you. But I was alone, completely, utterly alone in a way I'd never experienced before. And the worst part was that somewhere across town, my family was probably just waking up from Sophia's engagement party, nursing hangovers, and laughing about the night before, completely unaware that I'd almost died while they were celebrating. My phone was on the bedside table, and when I finally worked up the courage to check it, I found exactly what I'd expected. Nothing. No missed calls, no text messages, no frantic voicemails from family members who just heard the news. But there was something else. A notification from Instagram that made my stomach turn. Sophia had posted photos from her engagement party. Dozens of them. My parents beaming in the background, my aunts and uncles raising glasses, everyone looking radiant and happy. The timestamp on the last photo was 2:47 a.m., hours after the hospital had called to tell them I was in critical condition. I scrolled through the images with a sick fascination, seeing my family's joy frozen in digital amber while I'd been unconscious and alone. There was my mother, elegant in her navy dress, laughing at something my father had said. There was Sophia, glowing with happiness as she showed off her ring. There was my cousin taking a selfie with the caption, "Best night ever." The last photo was a group shot of the entire family, arms around each other, smiling like they didn't have a care in the world, like they hadn't just ignored multiple calls from a hospital, like one of their own wasn't lying in an ICU bed, wondering if anyone would even notice if she disappeared. I set the phone down with shaking hands and closed my eyes, but the images were burned into my memory. My family complete and happy without me. My family who couldn't be bothered to answer the phone when I needed them most. That's when I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to call them. I wasn't going to reach out and make excuses for their absence. I wasn't going to pretend that this was okay, that their priorities were understandable, that family obligations could be ranked in order of importance. If they wanted to know how I was, they could figure it out themselves. 3 days later, I was discharged from the hospital with strict instructions to rest and avoid heavy lifting for 6 weeks. Jennifer had offered to call someone to pick me up, but I'd arranged for a taxi instead. The ride home was quiet and surreal, watching the city go by through windows that seemed to separate me from a world that had kept spinning while I'd been fighting for my life. My apartment felt different when I walked in, smaller somehow, like I was seeing it through new eyes. Everything was exactly as I'd left it. The coffee cup in the sink, the book open on the couch, the pile of mail on the kitchen counter. But I was different. The person who'd lived here before the surgery had believed that family meant something, that blood ties created unbreakable bonds of love and loyalty. That person had been naive. I was settling onto the couch with a cup of tea when my phone finally rang. My mother's name appeared on the screen, and for a moment I just stared at it, watching it buzz against the coffee table like an angry insect. On the fourth ring, I answered. Lily, sweetheart, I just got your messages. How are you feeling? Her voice was bright and cheerful, like she was calling to chat about the weather, like she hadn't ignored multiple calls from a hospital while her daughter was in critical condition. I'm alive, I said flatly. Oh, good. I knew you'd be fine. You're so strong, just like your father. How was the surgery? Was it as simple as they thought it would be? I closed my eyes and counted to 10, trying to find words that wouldn't come out as screaming. Mom, my appendix ruptured. I was in surgery for over 4 hours. I almost died. Oh, honey, don't be so dramatic. Doctors always make things sound worse than they are. I'm sure you were never in any real danger. The hospital called you multiple times. They told you it was an emergency. There was a pause, and I could hear the sound of my mother moving around, probably doing dishes or folding laundry while she talked to me. Well, yes, they did call, but it was the middle of Sophia's party. You know how important that night was for her. I couldn't just leave. I could have died, Mom. But you didn't. See, I told you that you were overreacting. The words hit me like a physical blow. Even now, even after everything that had happened, she was still dismissing my pain, still minimizing my experience, still making it clear that I ranked somewhere below a party on her list of priorities. Where are you now? I asked. At home. Why? Are you planning to come see me? To check on how I'm doing? Another pause. Well, I was thinking I might stop by this weekend. But Lily, you sound fine. You're talking. Normally, you're not in the hospital anymore. I'm sure you just need rest. This weekend, for days away, she was planning to check on her daughter, who'd nearly died in surgery 4 days from now, when it was convenient for her schedule. Don't bother, I said quietly. What? I said don't bother coming. I'm fine, remember? Just being dramatic, just overreacting. I wouldn't want to inconvenience you. Lily, there's no need to be sarcastic. I'm trying to be supportive. No, Mom, you're trying to make yourself feel better about the fact that you chose a party over your daughter's life. That's not fair. Sophia's engagement is a once-in-a-lifetime event. So is dying. I hung up before she could respond. For the next 2 weeks, I recovered in silence. My coworkers sent flowers and cards. My supervisor called to check on me. Even some of my patients' parents reached out when they heard I was in the hospital. But my family? Nothing. No visits, no calls, no texts asking how I was healing. It was like I'd disappeared from their lives completely, and they hadn't even noticed. I went back to work on a Monday morning, still moving carefully but determined to reclaim some normalcy. The pediatric ward felt like home in a way my actual home no longer did, filled with people who cared about each other, who showed up when it mattered. Lily, Dr. Patel, one of the attending physicians, stopped me in the hallway. How are you feeling? We missed you. Better every day, I said, and meant it, ready to get back to work. Take it easy for a few more weeks. And Lily, I'm glad you're okay. When we heard how serious it was, we were all worried. Worried. People I worked with were worried about me, while my own family couldn't be bothered to return a phone call. That afternoon, I was checking on a 7-year-old patient named Tommy when his mother pulled me aside. Nurse Lily, can I ask you something? Of course. Tommy's been asking about you every day since you've been gone. He was so worried when we heard you were sick. I hope you don't mind, but I told him you were getting better. I felt tears prick at my eyes. A 7-year-old boy I'd cared for had been worried about me, had asked about me every day, while my own mother couldn't spare 5 minutes to visit. Thank you for telling him that. I managed to say, he made you something. She handed me a drawing of a stick figure in scrubs with a big smile, and the words, "Get well soon, Nurse Lily," written in crayon. He wanted to give it to you himself. I walked into Tommy's room, and his face lit up when he saw me. Nurse Lily, you're back. Are you all better now? I'm much better, thanks to good friends like you who were thinking about me. I was really scared you might not come back. Well, I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere. As I tucked Tommy's drawing into my pocket, I realized something that should have been obvious weeks ago. Family isn't just about blood. It's about the people who show up when you need them, who worry about you when you're gone, who celebrate when you come back. My real family was here, in this hospital, with these patients and co-workers who'd proven they cared more about my well-being than the people who'd raised me. I was walking to my car after my shift when I saw a familiar figure leaning against the hood. My sister Sophia, still glowing with the happiness of a newly engaged woman, but looking uncomfortable in the hospital parking lot. Lily, she said as I approached, we need to talk. Sophia looked different in the harsh fluorescent lighting of the hospital parking garage. The golden glow from her engagement photos was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like guilt. She was wearing a designer coat that probably cost more than I made in a month, her engagement ring catching the light every time she moved her hands. How did you know where to find me? I asked, not moving any closer to my car. I called the hospital. They said you'd just finished your shift. She shifted uncomfortably, her heels clicking against the concrete. Lily, I need to explain about the party. There's nothing to explain. You had your engagement party. I had emergency surgery. Life goes on. It's not that simple. Actually, it is exactly that simple. I pulled my keys from my purse, the metal cold against my fingers. Sophia, I almost died while you were taking selfies. The hospital called Mom and Dad multiple times, and no one answered because you were all too busy celebrating. We didn't know it was that serious. You didn't know because you didn't answer the phone. Sophia's perfect composure cracked slightly. Lily, please. I feel terrible about this. We all do. Do you? Because Mom called me 3 days after I got home and told me I was being dramatic. She said doctors always make things sound worse than they are. She was just trying to make herself feel better. She's been a wreck since she found out how bad it really was. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. A wreck? She's been a wreck. I'm the one who almost died alone in an operating room while my family partied 40 miles away. Lily, that's not fair. You know how important that night was to me. And you know how important not dying was to me. Sophia flinched like I'd slapped her. I'm trying to apologize here. No, you're trying to make yourself feel better. There's a difference. I started walking toward my car, but Sophia grabbed my arm. Wait, please. I know we messed up, but we're family. We can work through this. Family? I turned to face her fully. Sophia, when I was 7 and you were 9, I broke my arm falling off my bike. Do you remember what you did? She looked confused by the change of subject. I ran to get Mom and Dad. You carried me piggyback to the house because I couldn't walk, and you were afraid to leave me alone. You sat with me in the emergency room for 6 hours, holding my good hand and telling me jokes to keep me from crying. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. Lily, that's what family does. They show up. They answer the phone. They don't choose parties over emergencies. I pulled my arm free from her grip. The sister who carried me home when I was hurt, she died somewhere along the way. I don't know who you are anymore. I'm still the same person. No, you're not. The Sophia I grew up with would have left her own wedding if I needed her. This version of you couldn't even leave an engagement party. I got in my car and started the engine, but Sophia knocked on my window. I rolled it down halfway. Lily, please don't do this. Don't cut us out of your life over one mistake. One mistake. I stared at her through the glass. Sophia, it's been 6 weeks since my surgery. 6 weeks. How many times have you called to check on me? She opened her mouth, then closed it again. How many times has Mom visited? How many times has Dad asked how I'm healing? We thought you wanted space. I wanted my family. I wanted someone to care, that I almost died. Instead, I got space. Lots and lots of space. I started to roll up the window, but Sophia's voice stopped me. Dad's sick, Lily. The words hit me like ice water. What? Dad's sick. He's been having tests done for the past month. We just found out yesterday. Sophia's tears were flowing freely now. It's his heart. He needs surgery, and the doctors aren't sure. They're not sure he's going to make it. I felt the world tilt sideways. Dad, who'd taught me to ride a bike and helped me with my math homework and walked me to school every day until I was old enough to go alone. Dad, who'd missed my emergency surgery because he was at a party. When? I asked quietly. Next week, Tuesday. And you're telling me this because we need you. Because despite everything that's happened, you're still our family and we need you there. I stared at my sister through the car window, seeing the desperation in her eyes, the fear that was probably keeping her awake at night. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to promise that everything would be okay, to fall back into the familiar role of the supportive younger sister who always put family first. But a bigger part of me remembered lying alone in an ICU bed, wondering if anyone would even notice if I died. I'll think about it. I said finally, Lily. I said I'll think about it. I drove home in silence, my mind racing with memories and emotions I'd been trying to suppress for weeks. Dad, who'd been my hero for most of my childhood, who'd made me feel safe and loved and important. Dad, who'd ignored calls from a hospital while I fought for my life. My apartment felt smaller than ever when I walked in, like the walls were closing in around me. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my couch, staring at the drawing Tommy had made for me. Get well soon, Nurse Lily, in bright crayon colors, a reminder that some people cared enough to worry about me. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Sophia told me she talked to you. Please come to the hospital on Tuesday. Your father is asking for you, asking for me. Now, when he needed something, he was asking for me. Not 6 weeks ago when I needed him. I was still staring at the message when my phone rang. Dr. Rodriguez's name appeared on the screen, and I answered immediately. Dr. Rodriguez, is everything okay? Lily, I hope you don't mind me calling. I heard about your father. How did you? Your mother called the hospital looking for you. She spoke to Jennifer, who mentioned it to me. His voice was gentle, professional. I wanted you to know that if you need time off for family matters, we can arrange coverage for your shifts. Thank you. I'm not sure yet if I'm going. There was a pause. Lily, can I speak to you as a friend, not just as your doctor? Of course. I've been practicing medicine for 20 years, and I've seen a lot of families go through crises. What happened to you during your surgery, that was inexcusable. No one should have to face a medical emergency alone. Dr. Rodriguez. But I've also seen what happens when people let anger and hurt destroy their relationships permanently. Sometimes the people we love make terrible choices, and we have to decide whether those choices define them completely or whether there's room for forgiveness. What if I can't forgive them? Then that's your choice to make. But Lily, make sure you're choosing based on what's best for you, not just on what feels like justice. After he hung up, I sat in the dark for hours, thinking about forgiveness and justice and the difference between the two. I thought about the sister who'd carried me home when I was 7 and the sister who'd chosen a party over my emergency surgery. I thought about the father who'd made me feel like the most important person in the world and the father who'd ignored calls from a hospital. Were they the same people? Could someone who loved you also hurt you so deeply? And if they could, what did that mean about love itself? The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove to my parents' house for the first time since my surgery. The neighborhood looked the same, but I felt like a stranger walking up the familiar driveway. The key I'd had since high school still worked, but using it felt like trespassing. Lily, my mother's voice came from the kitchen, surprised and hopeful. Is that you? I found her sitting at the breakfast table with a cup of coffee and a pile of medical papers spread out in front of her. She looked older than I remembered, with new lines around her eyes and gray roots showing in her usually perfect hair. Hi, Mom. She stood up quickly, like she wanted to hug me, then seemed to think better of it. I'm so glad you came. How are you feeling? Are you fully recovered? I'm fine. Good. That's good. She gestured to the papers on the table. I've been trying to understand all these medical terms. The cardiologist gave us so much information, and I'm not sure I'm processing it all correctly. I looked at the papers, test results, surgical consent forms, insurance documents, the familiar medical terminology that was second nature to me, but probably looked like a foreign language to my mother. What exactly is wrong with Dad's heart? Blocked arteries. 3 of them. The doctor says he needs bypass surgery, but there are complications because of his diabetes and his age. Her voice cracked slightly. They're saying there's a 30% chance he won't survive the surgery. 30%. Those weren't terrible odds in the medical world, but they weren't great either. I'd seen families get much worse news and much better news. Where is he now? Upstairs, resting. The pre-surgery medications make him tired. She looked at me hopefully. Would you like to see him? I climbed the stairs to my parents' bedroom, each step feeling heavier than the last. Dad was lying in bed, looking smaller and frielier than I'd ever seen him. His skin had a grayish tint that I recognized from my work with cardiac patients, and his breathing seemed labored. Lily, his eyes opened when he heard me come in. Sweetheart, you came? Hi, Dad. Sit down, please. I need to talk to you. I sat in the chair beside his bed, the same chair where I'd sat as a child when I was sick and he'd read me stories. Lily, I need to apologize. What I did, there's no excuse for it. Dad. No, let me finish. I've been lying here for weeks thinking about that night, about the choices I made. I chose a party over my daughter's life, and I'll regret that for whatever time I have left. His words were exactly what I'd wanted to hear 6 weeks ago, but now they felt hollow, like too little too late. Why didn't you answer the phone? I asked quietly, because I was drunk, because I was having fun, because I convinced myself that if it was really serious, you would have called back. He closed his eyes, because I'm a selfish old man who took his daughter for granted. Dad, you're not. Yes, I am. And Lily, I need you to know that if I don't make it through this surgery, my biggest regret won't be the things I didn't do in my life. It'll be that I failed you when you needed me most. I felt tears starting to build behind my eyes. You didn't fail me completely. Yes, I did. But maybe if I survive this, I can spend whatever time I have left trying to be the father you deserved all along. We sat in silence for a moment, and I could hear the sound of my mother moving around downstairs, probably cleaning to keep herself busy. Lily, will you be there on Tuesday? At the hospital? My hands went numb as I gripped the phone. What kind of complication? Your father had a heart attack this evening. He's stable now, but we've had to move his surgery up to tomorrow morning. The blockages are more severe than we initially thought, and waiting until Tuesday could be fatal. The world seemed to tilt sideways. How bad is it? He's conscious and asking for his family. Ms. Thompson, I need to be honest with you. The surgery tomorrow is high risk. We're looking at a 5-hour procedure, and given his current condition, the survival rate is closer to 60%. 60%. Yesterday it had been 70%. Now my father had a 40% chance of dying on an operating table, just like I'd almost done 6 weeks ago. What time is the surgery? 7 a.m. We'll meet the family here by 6 for pre-surgical consultation. After I hung up, I sat in my apartment staring at the photograph of my family's worried faces, trying to process what I was feeling. Fear, definitely. Anger, still simmering beneath the surface. But something else too, something that felt like the last chance to make a choice I could live with. I called Sophia. Lily? Thank God. Did you hear? I heard. I'm coming to the hospital. Really? Oh, Lily, thank you. Mom's been crying for hours, and Dad keeps asking if you're going to be there. I'll be there at 6. Lily, I know things have been complicated between us, but Sophia, we can talk about everything else later. Right now, let's just focus on Dad. I arrived at Mercy General at 5:45 a.m., the same hospital where I'd nearly died 6 weeks earlier. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was back here, this time as the family member waiting for news instead of the patient fighting for her life. My mother was in the cardiac surgery waiting room, looking like she'd aged 10 years overnight. She was clutching a cup of coffee, with shaking hands, her usually perfect makeup smeared from crying. Lily! She stood up when she saw me, and for a moment we just looked at each other across the space that had grown between us over the past 6 weeks. How is he? Scared. In pain. But he's been asking for you every few minutes. She paused. He's in room 314 if you want to see him before the surgery. I found my father hooked up to monitors that beeped and hummed just like the ones that had surrounded my bed. He looked smaller than he had just 2 days ago, more fragile, like he was already halfway to somewhere else. Lily! His voice was weak, but his eyes were alert. You came? Of course I came. I wasn't sure you would. After everything, I sat down in the chair beside his bed, the same position I'd been in countless times as a child when he'd read me bedtime stories. Dad, I need to tell you something. What's that, sweetheart? I'm still angry with you. With all of you. What happened 6 weeks ago, it changed something fundamental about how I see our family. His face fell. Lily! But I'm here because despite everything, I love you, and because I don't want my last conversation with my father to be about how disappointed I am in the choices he made. Tears started rolling down his cheeks. I don't deserve your forgiveness. Maybe not, but I deserve to give it anyway, if that's what I choose to do. And do you choose to forgive me? I thought about the question seriously, looking at this man who'd been my hero and my heartbreak, who'd failed me when I needed him most, but who'd also loved me imperfectly for 26 years. I choose to try. I said, finally. I can't promise I'll get there, but I choose to try. He squeezed my hand with what little strength he had. That's more than I hoped for. Dr. Chin appeared in the doorway. Mr. Thompson, it's time. As they wheeled my father toward the operating room, he looked back at me one more time. Lily, if something happens, nothing's going to happen. You're going to get through this surgery, and then we're going to figure out how to be a family again. And if I don't, then you'll know that your daughter was here, holding your hand, choosing love over anger. The surgery took 7 hours. 7 hours of sitting in uncomfortable chairs, drinking terrible coffee, and watching my mother and sister fall apart piece by piece. 7 hours of thinking about forgiveness and family, and the difference between loving someone and trusting them. Sophia tried to apologize again around hour 3, but I stopped her. Not here, I said. Not today. Today we just focus on Dad. My mother was quieter, but I could see her watching me out of the corner of her. Like she was afraid I might disappear if she looked away. Around hour 5, Dr. Patel from my hospital appeared in the waiting room. Dr. Patel, what are you doing here? I heard about your father. I wanted to check on you. He sat down beside me. How are you holding up? I'm okay. Scared, but okay. And how are you feeling about being here, given everything that happened? I looked around the waiting room, at the other families clutching each other and staring at their phones, at the vending machines and the outdated magazines, and the smell of disinfectant that permeated everything. It's strange, I said. 6 weeks ago, I was the one on the operating table, and they were at a party. Now he's the one fighting for his life, and I'm here. Do you regret coming? No. I regret that it took a crisis for us to be in the same room again, but I don't regret being here. Dr. Patel nodded. Lily, can I tell you something I've learned in 20 years of medicine? Of course. Families are complicated. People make terrible choices, sometimes for terrible reasons, sometimes for reasons that made sense to them at the time. But at the end of the day, we all have to decide what we can live with. What do you mean? I mean that you can choose to forgive your family without forgetting what they did. You can choose to rebuild relationships without pretending the damage never happened. You can choose love without choosing to be naive. And if they hurt me again, then you'll make another choice. But Lily, don't let the fear of future pain rob you of the possibility of future joy. At 2:17 p.m., Dr. Chen finally emerged from the surgical suite, still in her scrubs, looking exhausted but relieved. The surgery was successful, she said, and my mother collapsed into Sophia's arms with relief. We were able to clear all 3 blockages and repair the damage from the heart attack. He's stable and should make a full recovery. Can we see him? Sophia asked. He's in recovery now. It'll be a few hours before he's awake, but yes, you can see him. My father looked peaceful in the recovery room, surrounded by the same kind of monitors that had kept me alive 6 weeks earlier. His color was better, and his breathing seemed easier. He's going to be okay, my mother whispered, like she was afraid to say it too loudly. Yes, he is. We sat with him for hours, taking turns holding his hand, waiting for him to wake up. When he finally opened his eyes around 6 p.m., the first word out of his mouth was my name. Lily, I'm here, Dad. You stayed. I stayed. He looked around the room at all of us, his family gathered around his bed, and smiled weakly. I had a dream during the surgery. I dreamed that I was the one lying alone in a hospital bed, and none of you came to see me. Dad. It was terrifying. Not the dying part, but the alone part. And when I woke up and saw all of you here, he squeezed my hand. I understood what we put you through. Really understood it. My mother was crying again, but quietly this time. We're so sorry, Lily. All of us. I know you are. Can you forgive us? Sophia asked. Really forgive us, not just say you forgive us. I looked at my family, flawed, selfish, human people who'd made terrible choices, but who were also capable of love and growth and change. People who'd failed me when I needed them most, but who were here now trying to do better. I think forgiveness is a process, not a moment. I said finally, I think it's something we'll all have to work on together. What does that mean? My mother asked. It means that I'm willing to try to rebuild our relationship, but it's going to be different than it was before. It means that I need you to understand that trust has to be earned back, not just assumed. What do you need from us? My father asked. I need you to show up, not just for the big moments, but for the small ones. I need you to answer the phone when I call. I need you to prioritize our relationship instead of taking it for granted. We can do that, Sophia said immediately. Can you? Because it's easy to make promises in a hospital room when everyone's emotional. It's harder to keep them when life gets busy and complicated again. We'll keep them, my mother said firmly. Lily, we almost lost you, and we almost lost your father. I'm not going to waste whatever time we have left by making the same mistakes again. Over the next few weeks, as my father recovered and our family slowly began to heal, I learned that forgiveness really was a process. Some days were easier than others. Some days I felt genuinely happy to be rebuilding our relationship. Other days, the hurt and anger would surface again, and I'd have to choose forgiveness all over again. But they showed up. When I had a bad day at work, my mother called to check on me. When I got a promotion, Sophia took me out to celebrate. When I had to work a double shift, my father brought me dinner at the hospital. Small gestures, but consistent ones. Proof that they were trying to be the family I'd needed them to be all along. 3 months after my father's surgery, I was working a night shift when I got a call from the emergency department. "Lily, we have a 7-year-old coming in with appendicitis. The parents are terrified, and they're asking for you specifically." It was Tommy, the little boy who'd made me the get well card. His appendix had started acting up during a family vacation, and his parents had driven 2 hours to bring him to our hospital because they trusted me to take care of him. "Nurse Lily," Tommy said when he saw me, despite being in obvious pain, "I'm scared." "I know you are, sweetheart, but you know what? I had my appendix out too, and I turned out just fine." "Really? Really? And I'm going to be right here with you the whole time." "Okay." As I held Tommy's hand while they wheeled him into surgery, I thought about the night 6 weeks earlier when I'd been in his position, scared, in pain, and desperately needing someone to care. Tommy's parents were in the waiting room, holding each other and crying with worry. They'd dropped everything to be here for their son, the way parents should, the way my parents finally were for me. Tommy's surgery went perfectly, and when he woke up, his parents were right there beside his bed. But so was I, and so was my mother, who'd driven to the hospital when I'd called to tell her about Tommy's situation. I brought him something, my mother said, pulling out a stuffed animal. I thought he might like a friend while he recovers. "You didn't have to do that."